In the sun-baked Arizona territory of 1875, a solemn exchange takes place at the edge of town. Emma Sullivan, barely 20, stands trembling as her father settles his gambling debts with the one payment he has left, her life. The Apache warrior, Taze, face etched with battle scars and eyes filled with ancient wisdom, accepts without a word. The townsfolk watch in horror, certain of the girl's fate. Yet when they reach his camp, he cuts her bonds and places his knife at her feet. "You are not property," he says simply. In this untamed wilderness, an unlikely bond forms between two souls from worlds meant to destroy each other. Can a woman traded like cattle and a warrior hardened by decades of betrayal find healing in each other's broken trust? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 5 years earlier, the Sullivan family had arrived in Copper Springs with hope gleaming in their eyes brighter than the Arizona sun. Thomas Sullivan, a carpenter by trade, had brought his wife Mary and their 15-year-old daughter Emma west after the economic devastation following the war between the states had left them with little in Pennsylvania. The promise of land, opportunity, and a fresh start had beckoned like a siren's call. Emma ran her fingers over the worn leather of her mother's Bible, the pages thin as onion skin and just as fragile. The book had been her mother's most precious possession, carried carefully across mountains and deserts, opened each night regardless of how bone-tired they all were. Now it was all Emma had left of her. "The Lord is my shepherd," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible in the small, dirt-floor cabin. "I shall not want." Want, however, was all the Sullivans had known since Mary's passing 2 winters ago. The fever had taken her quickly, leaving Thomas a hollowed-out shell of the strong, determined man who had led them west. Without Mary's gentle strength, he had crumbled like the dry desert soil beneath their feet. "Pa," Emma called, setting aside the Bible as she heard the uneven footsteps approaching the cabin. The familiar smell of whiskey preceded him through the door. "There's stew keeping warm." Thomas Sullivan nodded vaguely, his once keen carpenter's eyes unfocused, hair wild beneath his battered hat. "Not hungry, Emmy girl." Emma watched him slump into the chair she had crafted herself after he had sold his tools for drinking money. His hands, once steady enough to carve delicate scrollwork that had adorned fine homes back east, trembled as he pulled a flask from his coat pocket. "Mrs. Abernathy paid me for mending her quilts," Emma said, keeping her voice even. "I can make some payments to Mr. Blackwood tomorrow." She didn't mention that the woman had overpaid out of pity, her eyes sad as she pressed the coins into Emma's palm. Thomas took a long pull from his flask. "Good girl. Always my good, sensible girl." The words once would have warmed her. Now they fell like stones. Outside their window, Copper Springs continued its evening rituals. The saloon down the dusty main street had begun its nightly symphony of tinny piano music and boisterous voices. Respectable women were tucking children into bed while their husbands smoked pipes on porches, discussing cattle prices and railroad rumors. None of them spared much thought for the Sullivan girl. She was just another piece of frontier furniture, the dutiful daughter caring for her drunkard father, keeping to herself, attending church in dresses mended so many times they resembled patchwork quilts. Pretty enough in a plain way, folks said, but marked by that particular frontier sadness that came from burying your mother too young and watching your father drown his grief one bottle at a time. Emma stoked the small fire, listening to her father's breathing grow heavy with impending sleep. She had learned to treasure these moments when he drifted off, when the cabin fell quiet and she could imagine, just for a moment, a different life. From the small shelf above her narrow bed, Emma took down the wooden horse her father had carved for her 16th birthday, when his hands were still steady and his eyes still clear. She ran her thumb over its smooth mane, remembering how proud she had been of his craftsmanship, how certain she'd been that they would make a good life here. "We're going to be fine, Ma," she whispered to the empty room, a ritual as worn as her mother's Bible. "I'm keeping my promise. I'm looking after him." But even as the words left her lips, Emma felt the weight of unspoken truths. The whispers in town about her father's mounting debts. The way Vernon Blackwood, owner of the Copper Nugget Saloon, had begun to watch her with calculating eyes when she walked past. The growing knot of dread that tightened in her stomach each time her father stumbled home later, smelling stronger of whiskey and desperation. Emma tucked the wooden horse back in its place and checked that her father was truly asleep before retrieving a small tin from beneath a loose floorboard. Inside lay $3 silver and 7 pennies, her secret fund, built penny by penny from extra sewing work and herbs she gathered and sold to the town doctor. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Tomorrow she would go into town and face Vernon Blackwood, make another partial payment, and pray it would keep the wolves at bay a little longer. Emma blew out the candle and lay down on her thin mattress, clutching her mother's Bible to her chest like armor against the darkness closing in. Vernon Blackwood's Copper Nugget Saloon stood like a fortress at the center of Copper Springs, its wooden facade freshly painted while other buildings weathered to gray around it. Emma paused across the street, gathering her courage, the $3 silver heavy in her pocket. She adjusted her faded blue dress, once her mother's, taken in at the seams and let down at the hem, and crossed the dusty thoroughfare with her chin held high. "Well, look who's here," drawled a voice from the saloon's shaded porch. Blackwood himself sat in a carved chair that resembled a throne, boots propped on the railing. Unlike the other men in town with their weathered skin and calloused hands, Vernon Blackwood maintained the soft appearance of someone who made his living from the labor of others. His vest was embroidered silk, his watch chain gold, his smile sharp as a cactus spine. "Mr. Blackwood," Emma acknowledged, stopping at the bottom step. She never entered the saloon itself. "I've come to make a payment on my father's account." Blackwood's pale eyes assessed her like she was livestock at auction. "That's thoughtful, Miss Sullivan. Why don't you come up to my office where we can discuss the matter privately?" "I prefer to conduct business here, sir." Emma held out the coins. $3 toward what's owed. His smile tightened as he took the money, deliberately brushing his fingers against hers. $3. Your father's debt currently stands at $97.50. He pocketed the coins. "At this rate, you'll have him square in about 2.5 years. Emma fought to keep her expression neutral despite the shock. The debt had been $62 just a month ago. There must be some mistake. "Interest, Miss Sullivan. Your father agreed to the terms." Blackwood stood, towering over her. "Perhaps we could discuss alternative arrangements for settling the account. A woman with your domestic skills could be quite valuable in my establishment." Emma took a step back, her throat tight. "I'll continue with the payments as I can, Mr. Blackwood." His eyes hardened. "Your father's luck hasn't improved, Miss Sullivan. In fact, he was here until dawn, adding to his troubles. My patience has limits." "I understand," Emma said, though she couldn't understand how her father could be so careless with their future. "Good day, Mr. Blackwood." She turned away, feeling his gaze follow her down the street. Only when she rounded the corner did she allow her shoulders to slump, leaning against the wall of the general store to steady herself. $97. It might as well have been $1 million. "Emma? Are you unwell, child?" Mrs. Peterson, the minister's wife, approached with a basket of goods from the store. Emma straightened immediately. "Just catching my breath, ma'am. It's quite warm today." The older woman's eyes were kind but knowing. "Thomas was at the saloon again last night." It wasn't a question. In a town the size of Copper Springs, privacy was as rare as rainfall. "Yes, ma'am," Emma admitted. "But he'll be better. We're working through a difficult time." Mrs. Peterson sighed. "Your mother would be proud of your loyalty, Emma, but she would also want you to be wise." She hesitated. "My sister in Tucson mentioned the school there needs a teacher's assistant. A respectable position for a young woman. Perhaps." "Thank you, but I can't leave my father," Emma said firmly, clutching the wooden horse in her pocket like a talisman. She had carved her own small collection of animals from scraps of wood, teaching herself to use her father's abandoned tools, keeping this childhood treasure as her model. As Emma walked home, dust coating her worn boots, she heard raised voices coming from their cabin. Through the window, she saw her father gesturing wildly while two men, Strangers with hard eyes and gun belts slung low stood impassively before him. The arrangement stands, one was saying. Blackwood was clear. Payment in full by month's end or other measures will be taken. I need more time, her father pleaded, his voice cracking. The mine will be hiring soon. A month, the second man said flatly. Blackwood's been more than generous. Emma ducked around the side of the cabin, heart hammering. Through a crack in the wall, she watched her father collapse into a chair after the men departed. God help me, he whispered, reaching for his flask with trembling hands. What have I done? That night, Emma lay awake long after her father's snores filled the cabin. Whatever game of chance he was playing, they were approaching the final hand. And she had the terrible feeling that she was somehow part of the wager. She clutched her wooden horse, a child's comfort against adult fears, and tried to imagine a way out of the trap slowly closing around them. Emma awoke to the sound of her father's boots on the cabin floor, pacing like a caged animal. Dawn light barely filtered through the oilskin window covering, but Thomas Sullivan was fully dressed, his face gaunt with a desperation she'd never seen before. Pa? What's wrong? She sat up, pushing tangled hair from her face. He stopped, staring at her as if seeing a ghost. Emmy, my girl. His voice cracked. I've done something terrible. A chill ran through her despite the already warming air. Whatever it is, we'll fix it together. Thomas sank onto the edge of her narrow bed, the frame creaking beneath his weight. He hadn't always been so thin, she remembered. Once he'd been solid as an oak. I went to see Blackwood yesterday, he began, staring at his hands. Tried to reason with him, but the debt's too big now and Thomas swallowed hard. He made an offer. Emma waited, heart thrumming like a cornered rabbit's. He knows about the Apache who's been trading at the general store. Says he's got standing and wealth among his people. Thomas couldn't meet her eyes. Blackwood says he can arrange. He says the Apache would take you as payment. As a wife. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. A wife? You mean a slave? Stories of Apache raids, of women taken and never seen again, had been frontier nightmares since her childhood. No, Thomas insisted, a feverish light in his eyes. Blackwood says this one's different. Educated some by missionaries. Trades fair. Has a good position. And you believe Vernon Blackwood? Emma stood, backing away from her father. The man who's been bleeding us dry for 2 years? Thomas reached for her hand, which she snatched away. Emmy, listen. Blackwood wants you for his saloon. You understand what that means? At least with the Apache you'd have position. Respect even. Respect. The word tasted like ashes. You'd sell your own daughter to a savage rather than face your debts like a man? The blow caught her across the cheek, snapping her head to the side. Her father had never struck her before. They stared at each other in shock. I'm sorry, he whispered, horror dawning on his face. God forgive me. Emma touched her stinging cheek, tears welling. There must be another way. There isn't. Thomas reached into his coat and withdrew a leather-bound ledger, Blackwood's account book. He let me take this to show you. The debt's legal. If I don't pay, he'll have me thrown in territorial prison. You'll be alone with no protection. His voice dropped. We both know what happens to girls alone out here. Emma took the ledger with trembling hands. Page after page of her father's scrawled signature beneath growing sums. Interest compounding weekly at rates that made her dizzy. The final page held today's date, blank except for 2 options written in Blackwood's elegant script. Transfer of debt to Apache Trader Taze or indentured service of Emma Sullivan to Copper Nugget Saloon. This isn't legal, she whispered. You can't sell a person. It's not selling, Thomas insisted. It's a marriage arrangement. Happens all the time on the frontier. Not like this, Emma thought. Not with Apache warriors. Not with daughters being traded for gambling debts. When? The single word was all she could manage. He's in town today, trading at Harper's store. Thomas stood. We meet Blackwood at noon. Emma clutched the ledger, mind racing for escape. She had $8 hidden now. She could run, catch the stage to Tucson, take Mrs. Peterson's sister's offer. But even as the thought formed, she knew it was impossible. $8 wouldn't get her far, and her father would face prison, or worse, Blackwood's private justice. "I need to pack," she said finally, voice hollow. Thomas nodded, relief and shame warring on his face. "I'll saddle the horse." After he left, Emma sank to her knees beside her bed, pulling out her mother's Bible. "Guide me," she whispered, letting the book fall open. Her eyes caught a verse. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Cold comfort, but comfort nonetheless. She would need courage where she was going. Emma packed quickly. Her mother's Bible, the wooden horse, 2 dresses, her sewing kit. So little to show for 20 years of life. From beneath the floorboard, she took her savings, tucking the coins into a small pouch sewn into her chemise. If nothing else, she would not arrive destitute. When Thomas called her outside, she emerged dry-eyed and straight-backed. The terrified girl who had collapsed in tears remained locked inside the cabin. The woman who mounted the horse behind her father wore her fear like armor. Invisible but stealing her for whatever lay ahead, Copper Springs seemed unnaturally quiet as Emma and her father rode down the main street toward Harper's General Store. Faces appeared in windows, then quickly withdrew. Those who were outside stopped to watch their passage, expressions a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. Word had spread, as it always did. Vernon Blackwood waited on the store's porch, dressed as if attending a social event in his brocade vest and polished boots. Beside him stood a figure who made Emma's breath catch. The Apache warrior was tall, his copper skin weathered by sun and wind. Unlike the caricatures of savages in illustrated newspapers, he wore a mixture of traditional dress and frontier clothing, buckskin leggings, a calico shirt open at the throat revealing silver and turquoise ornaments, and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed features carved from granite. A knife with an elaborately decorated handle hung at his belt, alongside a holstered revolver. But it was his eyes that held Emma transfixed, dark as obsidian, taking in everything while revealing nothing. Ancient eyes, she thought, eyes that had seen too much. "Ah, the Sullivans," Blackwood called with inappropriate cheer. "Right on time. May I present Taze of the Chiricahua Apache." The warrior inclined his head slightly but remained silent. Thomas helped Emma dismount, his hands shaking. "Mr. Blackwood, we've come as arranged." "Excellent." Blackwood turned to the Apache. "As we discussed, the girl in exchange for Mr. Sullivan's debt of $97.50. Emma stood rigid, cheeks burning with humiliation. To be discussed like cattle at auction, her worth measured in dollars and cents. Taze studied her with those fathomless eyes, then spoke in a voice deeper and more cultured than she had expected. "She comes willingly?" The question startled everyone. Blackwood recovered first. "Her father speaks for her as is proper." "I asked the woman," Taze said, his English precise but accented. All eyes turned to Emma. A strange power settled over her, the power of someone with nothing left to lose. "I come to spare my father from prison," she said, meeting the warrior's gaze directly. "Not willingly, but by choice." Something flickered in Taze's expression, respect, perhaps. He nodded once, then addressed Blackwood. "The debt is paid." From a pouch at his waist, he withdrew a small leather bag, handing it to the saloon owner. "For the paper." Blackwood opened the bag, revealing several uncut turquoise stones. His eyes widened momentarily before he controlled his expression. "Of course." He tore the final page from the ledger and handed it to Taze, who folded it carefully and tucked it inside his shirt. Emma watched the transaction with detached fascination. Her fate, sealed with turquoise stones and a piece of paper. "And now," Blackwood said, barely containing his satisfaction, "we'll require a small ceremony to make this official." "No." Taze's voice was quiet but firm. "My people have our own ways. We go now." For a moment, Blackwood seemed ready to object, but something in the Apache's stance made him reconsider. "As you wish. The debt is cleared, Sullivan." He turned to Emma's father. "I suggest you avoid my tables in the future." Thomas stood with shoulders slumped, aging before Emma's eyes. "Emmy, I don't," she said softly. "There's nothing left to say." Taze brought forward a second horse, a sturdy paint mare. Without asking permission, he lifted Emma's small bundle of possessions and secured it behind the saddle. Then he turned to her, a length of rawhide in his hands. "Your wrists," he said, "the final humiliation." Emma extended her hands, willing them not to tremble. The crowd that had gathered murmured as Taze bound her wrists, his movements efficient but not cruel. He helped her mount, then secured the mare's lead rope to his own saddle. Emma looked down at her father one last time. "Goodbye, Pa." Thomas reached for her foot in the stirrup, his face ravaged with grief. "I'll find a way to bring you back, Emmy. I swear it." She said nothing, knowing some promises were beyond keeping. As they rode out of town, Emma felt the stares of the townspeople boring into her back. Mrs. Peterson stood outside the church, hands clasped in prayer. The blacksmith removed his hat as they passed. Even the children were silent, watching wide-eyed as the white girl was led away by the Apache warrior. Emma fixed her gaze between her horse's ears, refusing to look back. Whatever lay ahead, death, slavery, or some existence between the two, she would face it with the dignity her father had forgotten. They rode until the sun hung low on the western horizon, climbing steadily into rocky foothills where juniper and pine replaced desert scrub. Emma's wrists chafed raw beneath the rawhide bonds, her back ached, and thirst parched her throat, but she refused to complain. She would not give him the satisfaction of hearing her beg. Taze had not spoken a single word since they left Copper Springs. Occasionally he would stop, scanning the terrain with hawk-like intensity before continuing. Once, he dismounted to study tracks in the dust that Emma couldn't discern. The warrior moved with an economy of motion that spoke of absolute confidence in his environment. A stark contrast to the uncertain men of Copper Springs who postured and proclaimed their mastery of the frontier. As twilight deepened the shadows, they crested a ridge. Below lay a small valley where a stream cut through rocky ground. Near the water stood 3 hide-covered structures, wickiups, Emma remembered they were called. A fire burned in the center of the camp, tended by a young boy who looked up at their approach. Taze raised his hand in greeting, calling out words in his native tongue. The boy responded, then disappeared into one of the wickiups. A moment later, an elderly woman emerged, her face deeply lined with age but her movements spry. She studied Emma with undisguised curiosity as Taze helped her dismount, her bound wrists making the process awkward. Emma stood on trembling legs, uncertain what to expect. In the stories settlers told, Apache captives were subjected to tortures too horrific to name. She steeled herself, determined not to show fear. Taze spoke quietly to the old woman, who nodded and returned to her wickiup. Then he turned to Emma, his obsidian eyes reflecting the firelight. "You are afraid," he stated. Emma lifted her chin. "Wouldn't you be?" A ghost of something, amusement perhaps, flickered across his face. He reached for his knife, the one with the decorated handle, and Emma flinched despite her resolve. Instead of the violence she expected, Taze carefully sliced through the rawhide binding her wrists. "You are not my prisoner," he said, sheathing the knife. He picked it up again and placed it on the ground at her feet. "You are not property to be traded." Emma stared at the knife, then at him, confusion replacing fear. "Then why did you take me?" "The paper," Taze said, touching his shirt where he had tucked the ledger page. "It holds power among your people. Power that could hurt you." "I don't understand." The man with snake eyes. Taze's meaning was clear. Blackwood's pale gaze had indeed been serpentine. "He wanted you for himself. Your father's debt was the chain." The old woman returned carrying something in her gnarled hands. She offered it to Emma, a pair of deerskin moccasins decorated with simple beadwork. "For you," Taze translated. "Your boots will not serve you here." Emma accepted the gift mechanically, still trying to process Taze's words. "You bought me? To free me?" I paid what was demanded to take you from danger. He gestured to the moccasins. Your feet will bleed in those stiff boots. These will protect you. Hesitantly, Emma sat on a nearby rock and removed her worn leather boots. The moccasins fit surprisingly well, soft against her blistered feet. She stood, testing them against the rocky ground. Thank you, she said to the old woman, who smiled with tobacco-stained teeth and spoke to Taze. My grandmother says you have good strong feet. You will learn to walk our paths. He pointed to the smallest wickiup. You will sleep there, alone. No one will disturb you. Emma glanced at the shelter, then back at Taze. You still haven't answered me. If I'm not your prisoner or your wife, why am I here? Taze was silent for a long moment. Your people and mine, there is much blood between us. But there was a time when I lived among your kind. I learned your ways, your writing. His voice hardened. I learned how your men treat women with no protection. He stooped to pick up the knife he had placed at her feet, offering it to her handle first. Keep this close. Tomorrow we will talk more. Tonight, rest. Emma took the knife, its weight unfamiliar in her hand. Where are we going tomorrow? Home, Taze said simply. To my people's land, far from here. As he walked away to tend the horses, Emma clutched the knife, uncertain whether she had been rescued or simply traded from one form of captivity to another. The old woman gestured for her to sit by the fire, offering a wooden bowl of stew that smelled of unfamiliar spices. Hunger won over caution. Emma ate, watching the stars emerge above the valley. For the first time in years, no one expected anything of her. No nursing of a drunken father, no scraping together coins for debt payments, no maintaining appearances for judgmental townsfolk. Inside the small wickiup, she found a bed of clean furs laid over fragrant pine boughs. Despite her fears, exhaustion claimed her quickly. Her last thought before sleep took her was of the knife beside her hand. Not a weapon of threat, but a symbol of unexpected freedom. Dawn broke with the chattering of birds Emma didn't recognize. For a disorienting moment, she stared at the hide walls of the wickiup, struggling to remember where she was. Then yesterday's events crashed over her like a wave. Her father, Blackwood, the Apache warrior who had purchased her freedom rather than her body. She emerged from the small shelter to find Taze sitting cross-legged by a rekindled fire, a small slate and piece of chalk in his hands. The old woman, his grandmother, she recalled, stirred something in a pot hung over the flames, while the boy from yesterday was nowhere to be seen. Taze looked up as Emma approached. You slept well. His English was careful, deliberate. Yes, thank you. She hesitated, then sat across from him, smoothing her rumpled dress. Where did you learn English? Missionaries. St. Jerome's mission. His expression remained impassive. 10 years there. Reading, writing, God's word. Something like irony touched his voice at the last words. The grandmother offered Emma a wooden cup of some steaming liquid, a tea that smelled of mint and something earthy. Emma accepted with a nod of thanks. What's her name? Emma asked, gesturing to the old woman. In your tongue, it would be. Taze paused, considering. Singing bird. He spoke to his grandmother, who cackled and replied at length. What did she say? A rare smile touched Taze's lips. She says your hair is the color of autumn grass. She asks if all white women have hair like touched by sunset. Emma's hand went self-consciously to her strawberry blonde hair, usually covered by a bonnet in town. Only some of us. Taze held up the slate. On it, he had written a single word in careful block letters. Taze. You will learn some of my language, he said. I will learn more of yours. Understanding between people begins with words. Emma took the slate, studying it. You went to mission school for 10 years but came back to your people? Taze's face hardened. The black robes taught reading and Jesus. They also taught that Apache ways were evil, that our gods were false. He looked away. When I was 16, soldiers came to the mission. They took the Apache children to different places, to become like white people. You escaped. I walked for 20 days, Found my mother's people. His eyes met hers. I keep what was useful: reading, numbers, English words. I left behind the shame they tried to teach me. Emma handed back the slate. I'm sorry that happened to you. Taze seemed surprised by her response. He wrote another word on the slate. Emma. Your name, he said. In our language, we would say. He spoke a word with sounds Emma couldn't quite catch. She tried to repeat it, mangling the pronunciation. Singing. Bird laughed, but not unkindly, and said it again more slowly. Emma tried once more, closer this time. Taze nodded approval and wrote another word, water. For the next hour, they continued this way, Taze writing English words and teaching her their Apache equivalents, Emma struggling with sounds her tongue had never formed before. By mid-morning, she had learned words for fire, horse, sun, and several basic greetings. The boy returned carrying rabbits he had snared. Taze introduced him as Little Fox, his sister's son, explaining that the boy's father had been killed by Mexican soldiers the previous year. Where is your sister? Emma asked. With our main camp, 2 days' journey from here, Taze replied. We came to trade with settlements, then return. And I'm going with you to this camp? Emma couldn't keep the apprehension from her voice. Taze set down the slate. You have choice. I can take you to larger white settlement, Tucson. You would be free from Blackwood there. The offer stunned Emma. Freedom so simply offered. Yet what would she do in Tucson? A young woman alone with only $8 to her name? Why would you help me? She asked. Your people and mine are enemies. Not all Apache, not all white people. Taze's voice was quiet. At Mission, there was a teacher. She treated Apache children with kindness when others did not. She taught me that single acts can break chains of hatred. Emma thought of Mrs. Peterson's kindness, of the teacher's position in Tucson that now seemed a lifetime away. If I go to your camp, what happens to me there? You would be under my protection. No one would harm you. Taze hesitated. When spring comes, traders go to Tucson. If you still wish to leave then, I would see you safely there. Months among the Apache, or immediate freedom with uncertain prospects. Emma weighed her choices, studying the man across from her. Yesterday, she had seen him as her captor. Today, he offered her options her own father had denied her. I'll go to your camp, she said finally, and learn more of your words. Taze nodded, satisfaction in his eyes. He wrote another word on the slate, trust. The hardest word to learn, he said. In any language. They broke camp at dawn the following day. Emma watched with fascination as the small Apache group dismantled their temporary home with practiced efficiency. The wickiups came apart into components that could be loaded onto pack horses. Nothing was wasted, nothing left behind except tamped earth where the fire had been. Your people move often? Emma asked as she helped Singing Bird fold a tanned hide. Taze paused in his work of loading a pack horse. We follow game, seasons, water, different places for different moons. He reached into his saddlebag and withdrew a folded piece of hide. Kneeling beside Emma, he spread it on the ground, revealing a hand-drawn map etched with charcoal and natural pigments. We are here, he said, pointing to a small mark near a line representing a river. His finger traced a path through what appeared to be mountains. 2 days, we reach here. He indicated a larger marking. Our winter camp. Emma studied the map, impressed by its detail. You made this. Taze nodded. Maps were one good thing from mission school. This land, he swept his hand to encompass the horizon, has been Apache land for many generations. We know every spring, every pass. Emma noticed symbols she couldn't decipher scattered across the map. What do these mean? Dangers. Places where soldiers patrol, where other tribes hunt. His expression darkened. Where Apache blood has been spilled. The reminder of the ongoing conflicts between her people and his sent a chill through Emma. Will I be in danger from your people when we reach the camp? Taze rolled the map carefully. You are under my protection. It will be enough. He studied her face. But you must learn to ride better. Today's journey is difficult. Emma had ridden since childhood, but side saddle on gentle horses through town or on well-worn trails. The Apache rode differently, forward on their mounts, moving as one with the animal beneath them. "I can learn," she said with more confidence than she felt. Little Fox brought her horse, the same paint mare from yesterday. Instead of a proper saddle, it bore only a blanket secured with a simple leather girth. "No saddle?" Emma asked, apprehension growing. "Apache way is better for long journeys," Taze explained. "Horse moves freely, rider learns balance." Before Emma could protest, Singing Bird approached with something folded in her arms. Buckskin leggings and a loose tunic, similar to what the old woman herself wore. Taze translated his grandmother's words. "She says your dress will split on the rocks. These will protect your skin and let you ride properly." Emma hesitated, looking down at her calico dress, one of only two she owned, already dusty and wrinkled from yesterday's journey. Practicality warred with the modesty instilled in her since childhood. Practicality won. With Singing Bird's help, she retreated behind a stand of junipers to change. The buckskin garments felt strange against her skin, but when she emerged and saw Taze's nod of approval, she knew she had made the right choice. "Now you will not catch on every branch," he said. "Come, I show you how to mount." For the next half hour, Taze patiently demonstrated how to grip with her knees, how to move with the horse rather than against it. Emma fell twice before finding her balance, her cheeks burning with embarrassment, but Taze never mocked her efforts. "Good," he said finally. "You learn quickly." By mid-morning they were underway. Taze led, with Emma following, Singing Bird on a gentle gelding behind her, and Little Fox bringing up the rear with the pack horses. They followed game trails that Emma would never have noticed, climbing steadily into higher country where the air grew cooler and pine scent filled her nostrils. When they stopped at midday beside a clear stream, Emma slid from her horse with trembling legs, muscles aching in unfamiliar ways. Singing Bird chuckled sympathetically, offering a handful of dried berries and what appeared to be jerked meat. "What is this?" Emma asked, eyeing the meat cautiously. "Deer," Taze answered, refilling a water skin from the stream. "Eat. You need strength." As they rested in the dappled shade, Emma considered her situation. Yesterday morning, she had awakened in her father's cabin, dreading a future of increasing debt and Blackwood's predatory attention. Now she sat among people who had been abstractions to her before, dangerous savages from frontier tales, eating their food, wearing their clothing, learning their ways. She watched Taze consulting his map again, his strong profile sharp against the forest backdrop. He had treated her with more respect in 2 days than most white men had shown her in years. "We continue," Taze announced, rolling the map. "Difficult path ahead. Stay close." As Emma remounted, grimacing at her sore muscles, she caught him watching her with something like concern. "I'll manage," she assured him. He nodded, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. "I know. You have strong spirit, like good Apache woman." Coming from him, Emma realized, it was high praise indeed to be why late afternoon. The trail narrowed as they entered a towering canyon. Sheer rock walls rose on either side, streaked with red and ochre, while the path ahead twisted between massive boulders and stands of stunted juniper. Emma had never seen anything like it. In Copper Springs, the landscape had been open, the horizon visible for miles. Here, the world closed in, magnificent and oppressive at once. "Grandfather Canyon," Taze said, noting her awe. "Safe path for those who know it. Trap for those who don't." Emma understood his meaning as they navigated a section where the trail vanished entirely, crossing smooth stone that would hold no tracks. Perfect place for ambush or escape from pursuit. The day grew hotter as sun reflected off stone walls. Despite Singing Bird's waterskin offered at regular intervals, thirst clawed at Emma's throat. Her head throbbed, whether from heat or the strain of unfamiliar riding, she couldn't tell. "How much farther today?" she asked when they paused to rest the horses. Taze pointed to a ridge high above. "We camp there. Water. Shelter." Emma nodded, swaying slightly as she stood. The world tilted unexpectedly, and she grabbed her mare's mane to steady herself. Emma, Taze's voice seemed to come from far away. I'm fine, she managed, though the canyon walls appeared to be breathing around her. Just tired. They continued upward, the trail growing steeper. Emma focused on the back of Taze's horse, willing herself to stay mounted. Her skin felt too tight, burning despite the shadows now filling the canyon. When they finally emerged onto a small plateau near sunset, relief washed through her. As she dismounted, her legs buckled. The ground rushed up to meet her, but before she hit the dirt, strong arms caught her. Taze's face swam above her, concern etching lines around his eyes. Fever, she heard him say to Singing Bird. The old woman's weathered hand pressed against her forehead, and a rapid exchange in Apache followed. Emma tried to stand. I just need rest. Be still, Taze commanded. He lifted her as though she weighed nothing, carrying her to where Little Fox was already constructing a small shelter from branches and one of the hides. Inside, on a bed of pine boughs, Emma surrendered to the fever. Time fragmented. Sometimes Singing Bird sat beside her, spooning cool water between her parched lips. Sometimes it was Taze, his strong hands supporting her head. Fever dreams took her. Her mother's face, her father's betrayal, Blackwood's snake eyes, all swirling in a nightmarish jumble. Once, she awakened to find Taze grinding something on a flat stone by firelight. He mixed the resulting powder with water from a steaming pot. Drink, he said, holding the bitter mixture to her lips. Medicine. Emma complied, too weak to resist. What is it? From this. He showed her a small leather pouch embroidered with intricate beadwork. Medicine bundle. Plants from sacred places. Will cool the fire in your blood. The liquid burned going down, but a numbing effect followed. As Emma drifted back toward unconsciousness, Taze spoke quietly. My mother was healer. She taught me which plants bring life, which bring death. His voice took on a rhythmic quality, almost like a prayer. The mission fathers said her knowledge was witchcraft. But when fever came to the mission, it was my mother's medicines they begged for. Was she? Emma struggled to form words through her fever. Was she at the mission too? No. She would come to trade, to see me. His voice grew distant. Soldiers killed her 3 winters ago. Said she was spy for hostile bands. I'm sorry, Emma whispered. Sleep now, Taze replied. Medicine works while eyes are closed. Later, hours or minutes, Emma couldn't tell. She awoke to low voices. Taze and Singing Bird sat by the fire outside her shelter, silhouettes against the night. The old woman spoke at length, gesturing occasionally toward where Emma lay. What is she saying? Emma asked weakly when Taze came to check on her. He studied her face before answering. She says you have white woman's sickness. Body not used to our land, our water, our air. He dipped a cloth in cool water and placed it on Emma's forehead. She has seen it before. Strong ones live. Weak ones return to earth. Am I dying? The question emerged unbidden. No. His certainty was comforting. You are not weak. Tomorrow fever will break. Something in his tone made Emma believe him. Taze? She murmured as sleep pulled at her again. Thank you for the medicine. In her fever dreams that night, Emma stood at a crossroads. Behind her lay Copper Springs, her father, the life she had known. Ahead, a path wound into misty mountains she couldn't see the end of. At the fork stood Taze, neither beckoning nor blocking, simply waiting for her choice. When dawn broke, Emma opened her eyes to find the fever had indeed broken. Weakness remained, but the burning had subsided. Outside her shelter, she could hear Singing Bird singing softly, a melody unlike any hymn Emma had known, yet somehow equally sacred. They traveled more slowly the next day, Taze adjusting their pace to accommodate Emma's recovery. Though still weak, she insisted on riding rather than being carried on a travois as Singing Bird had suggested. Pride, perhaps foolish, kept her upright in the saddle despite muscles that trembled with exertion. By midday, They had descended from the higher elevations into a broad valley where a creek meandered through cottonwoods. The terrain was gentler here, the path less treacherous. "We rest," Taze announced, helping Emma dismount. "Eat, then continue." As Singing Bird prepared a simple meal of dried meat softened in water with wild onions, Taze disappeared briefly, returning with a handful of berries for Emma. "Good for strength," he explained, placing them in her palm. The small gesture of consideration touched her unexpectedly. They had just finished eating when Taze suddenly tensed, head lifting like a deer sensing danger. His hand moved to his rifle, propped against a nearby tree. "What is it?" Emma whispered. "Horses. 4, maybe 5. He rose in one fluid motion. "Stay here." Before he could move further, riders appeared through the cottonwoods. A man and woman, 2 young boys, and a teenage girl, their wagon visible further back among the trees. The settler family pulled up short at the sight of the Apache camp, the father's hand dropping to his sidearm. "Easy now," the man called, his voice tight with tension. His eyes flicked from Taze to Little Fox to Singing Bird, then widened as they fell on Emma. "Good Lord, there's a white woman with them." Emma rose unsteadily to her feet, suddenly conscious of her buckskin clothing, her unbound hair, how thoroughly non-white she must appear. "Hello," she called. "We mean no harm. We're just resting." The settlers exchanged glances of disbelief. The woman spoke next, her sunburned face creased with concern. "Miss, are you being held against your will?" The question was so ironic that Emma nearly laughed. "No, ma'am. I'm traveling with them voluntarily." Taze remained perfectly still, his face impassive, but Emma could sense the tension coiled in him, ready to defend if necessary. The settler man dismounted cautiously, keeping his family behind him. "Name's Daniel Foster. This is my wife Sarah, our children. We're headed to our new homestead near the Gila River." "Emma Sullivan," she replied. "This is Taze of the Chiricahua, his grandmother Singing Bird, and his nephew Little Fox." Foster nodded stiffly, clearly uncomfortable with the social niceties of introducing himself to Apache. "Miss Sullivan, I don't mean to presume, but if you're in some kind of trouble, we'd be happy to help you reach the nearest settlement." "That's very kind, Mr. Foster, but as I said, I'm traveling with them by choice." The woman, Sarah, climbed down from her horse and approached cautiously. "Perhaps we could speak privately, Miss Sullivan?" Her meaning was clear. Away from her captors. Emma might tell the truth. Emma hesitated, then nodded. She followed Sarah a short distance away, though still within sight of the others. "My husband fought Apache during the war," Sarah said quietly. "I know what they're capable of. Whatever they've told you, whatever they've promised, you can't trust them. Let us help you." Emma studied the woman's face. Earnest, concerned, utterly convinced of her own righteousness. A week ago, Emma might have shared her certainty. "Mrs. Foster, I appreciate your concern, truly, but you're mistaken about my situation." She glanced back at Taze, who watched them with unreadable eyes. "I was in danger in the white settlement. Taze helped me escape it." Sarah's expression shifted from concern to something like scandal. "You mean you've gone willingly with an Indian man? My dear, do you understand what that means for your reputation? Your very soul?" Emma touched the small cross she still wore beneath her buckskin tunic. "I believe God judges us by our actions and intentions, not by whom we travel with." The woman pressed a handkerchief into Emma's hand, a delicate thing embroidered with violets, incongruously fine in this wilderness. "Keep this. If you change your mind, head southwest. Fort McDowell is 3 days' ride. Tell them the Fosters sent you." When they returned to the others, an uneasy truce seemed to have formed. Foster was showing Taze a map, pointing to landmarks, likely seeking confirmation of his route. The children stared openly at Little Fox, who ignored them with dignified indifference. "We should move on," Foster announced, folding his map. "Daylight's wasting." He turned to Emma. "The offer stands, Miss Sullivan." "Thank you, but I'll continue on my path," she replied firmly. As the settler family mounted up, Sarah Foster looked back at Emma. "Don't forget who you are," she called. "White blood doesn't wash out." After they had gone, silence hung over the Apache camp. Emma clutched the handkerchief, its fine cotton a reminder of a world that already seemed distant. "You could have gone with them," Taze said finally. "Safe passage to fort." "Is that what you want?" Emma asked. "What I want is not important. Your choice must be your own." Emma tucked the handkerchief into her small bundle of possessions. "I've made my choice," she said simply. "We should continue our journey." Taze studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. As they packed to leave, Emma felt his gaze return to her repeatedly, as if seeing her for the first time. Their journey continued through changing landscapes, rocky outcroppings giving way to pine forests, then opening into grassy meadows where deer grazed at dusk. Emma found herself noticing details she would have overlooked before. The different tracks animals left in soft earth, the way certain birds called before rain, how the Apache read these signs as easily as she had once read books. On the fourth morning after her fever, they sat beside a small fire as dawn painted the eastern sky. Taze had taken to rising earlier than the others, using the quiet time to teach Emma more of his language. In turn, she helped refine his English, which was formal and sometimes awkward despite his years at the mission. "This word," Emma said, writing on the slate. "Freedom. How would you say it?" Taze considered, then spoke a word with rolling sounds that Emma attempted to repeat. He shook his head slightly and said it again, more slowly. "The meaning is not exactly the same," he explained. "Your word means to be without chains. Our word means to move with purpose, to follow one's true path." Emma tried again, coming closer to the correct pronunciation. "Like the difference between being unfenced and knowing where to graze?" Taze's eyes brightened with unexpected humor. "Yes, though Apache are not cattle." "I didn't mean," Emma began, then saw the rare smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You're teasing me." "Perhaps." He reached into a pouch at his belt and withdrew something that caught the early light. An eagle feather, its shaft decorated with intricate beadwork. "For you." Emma accepted it carefully. "It's beautiful. But why?" "Eagle sees far, adapts to high places and low valleys, fears no journey." He nodded toward her. "Like you now, learning to see with new eyes." The gift touched her deeply. No one had given her anything so personal since her father had carved the wooden horse years ago. "Thank you. I'll treasure it." As the others stirred and breakfast preparations began, Emma found herself watching Taze with new awareness. Over the past days, his reserve had gradually softened. She had caught glimpses of the man beneath the warrior's exterior, thoughtful, observant, possessed of both strength and unexpected gentleness. Later that day, as they rode side by side through a meadow bright with wildflowers, Emma gathered her courage to ask a question that had lingered. "Taze, when we reach your people's camp, what will happen to me? What will they think of a white woman among them?" He was silent for several moments. "Some will be curious, some suspicious. Many of our people have lost family to white soldiers, settlers." "Like your mother," Emma said softly. He nodded. "But you come under my protection. As daughter of Singing Bird's Lodge, none will harm you." "As daughter?" Emma asked, surprised. Not as wife," Taze finished, his eyes on the trail ahead. "That is not why I brought you." Both relief and something less definable fluttered in Emma's chest. "The settlers yesterday assumed. What white people assume about Apache is rarely truth," he interrupted, then seemed to regret his sharpness. More gently, he added, "Marriage among my people is serious matter. Not like your father's bargain with Blackwood." Emma flushed. "Not all white marriages are bargains." "No?" Taze raised an eyebrow. "Women choose freely? Can say no to father's choice?" "Sometimes," Emma admitted. "Not always. Among Apache, woman has strong voice in who she marries. Can refuse even chief's son if her heart says no." He glanced at her. "When we reach winter camp, you will see Apache women are not slaves like white women think." Emma bristled at this characterization. White women aren't slaves. Cannot own property without husband. Cannot vote. Cannot. And Apache women can do these things? She challenged. Apache women own their own horses, their own lodges. When council meets, women's voices are heard. Pride colored his voice. My grandmother was respected war leader in her youth. Emma looked ahead at Singing Bird, bent with age but still riding with straight back and keen eyes. It was difficult to imagine the fragile-looking woman as a warrior, yet something in her bearing made the claim believable. Tell me about your mother, Emma said. If you wish to. Taze was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, she was called Morning Light, could track deer across solid rock. Knew healing plants no one else could find. His voice softened with memory. She sang to me when I was taken to mission, said her voice would find me in dreams, remind me who I was. And did it? Yes. He reached into his shirt and withdrew something on a leather cord. A small stone amulet. Her parting gift. When soldiers killed her, I felt it break here. He touched his chest. Knew she was gone before messenger came. The raw emotion in his voice created a bridge between them. Without thinking, Emma reached across the space between their horses and briefly touched his hand. I felt the same when my mother died, like something torn inside that can't be mended. Taze looked at her hand on his, then met her eyes. For the first time since she'd met him, his expression was completely unguarded, a recognition of shared grief that transcended the boundaries between their worlds. Perhaps, he said softly, some tears water the same ground. They made camp that evening in a sheltered hollow near a small spring. According to Taze, they would reach the winter encampment by midday tomorrow. Emma felt a curious mixture of apprehension and anticipation at the prospect of meeting his people, her future companions for the coming months. After the evening meal, Little Fox entertained them by mimicking various animal calls with remarkable accuracy. Even Singing Bird laughed at his comical rendition of an agitated prairie dog. When the boy finally tired and curled up in his blankets, a comfortable silence settled around the fire. Emma watched the flames dance, realizing how much had changed in just over a week. She no longer flinched when Taze moved near her, no longer viewed his people with fearful suspicion. The buckskin clothing that had felt so foreign now seemed practical, comfortable. Her hands, once soft from household work, were developing calluses from riding and helping with camp tasks. You are quiet, Taze observed, adding a small branch to the fire. Thinking of tomorrow? Yes, Emma admitted. What your people will think of me. Taze studied her across the flames. They will see what I see. Woman of courage. The simple compliment warmed her more than the fire. I've been wondering something, she said. You speak English well? You can read and write. You could live among white people if you chose. Why did you return to your people after the mission? Taze was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his saddlebag and withdrew something wrapped in soft hide. Unwrapping it carefully, he revealed a faded photograph in a tarnished frame, a formal portrait of a young Apache woman with a solemn infant on her lap and a small boy standing beside her. My mother, my brother, me. He passed it to Emma. Taken by photographer who came to reservation near mission. Only picture I have of them. Emma studied the image with fascination. The woman was beautiful, with high cheekbones and proud bearing despite the stiff pose required by early photography. The standing boy, Taze at perhaps 6 or 7 years, had the same intense eyes he now possessed as a man. Your brother? She asked gently. Died winter after picture. Sickness that came from blankets given by army. His voice was matter of fact, but pain shadowed his eyes. I was taken to mission that same year. They said to educate me, make me civilized. Emma handed the photograph back carefully. What happened? 10 years there. Learned reading, writing, numbers, Bible stories, how to farm like white man, build houses like white man. Taze's face hardened. Also learned white man's promises worth nothing. Treaties broken again. Apache children beaten for speaking own language. Girls. He stopped, jaw tightening. What about the girls? Emma asked softly. Some mission fathers had special interest in older girls. When I fought to protect my cousin, they said I was savage. Kept me locked away. The firelight cast deep shadows across his face. When I was 16, government men came, said all Apache children to be sent to schools far away. To kill the Indian, save the man. Emma had heard of such policies, discussed in church meetings as Christian charity. Now, hearing Taze's experience, the cruelty of it struck her. So you escaped, she said. He nodded. Walked many days. Nearly died. Found my mother's band. A faint smile touched his lips. She knew I would come home. Had been waiting. And then you chose to stay with your people, despite your education. I use what I learned. Read army papers. Translate for chiefs at councils. But yes, I choose Apache way. He rewrapped the photograph with careful hands. White world has no place for Indian who thinks himself equal. Always beneath, always less. I'm sorry, Emma said. The words inadequate for the injustices he described. Taze looked at her directly. Now I ask you something. Your father traded you like horse. Why did you not hate him? The question caught her off guard. I don't know. He wasn't always that way. After my mother died, something broke in him. Grief changes path, not character, Taze said. True nature shows when trail becomes difficult. Emma considered this. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps I wanted to believe he was better than he was. She twisted the fabric of her tunic between her fingers. I spent years trying to save him, but he didn't want saving. And now? Do you wish to return to White World when spring comes? The question hung in the air between them. A week ago, her answer would have been immediate. Now uncertainty crept in. I don't know, she admitted. I don't belong in your world, but I'm not sure I belong in my old one either. Belonging is not place, Taze said quietly. Is people who see you truly. The simplicity and depth of his statement resonated within her. Emma found herself reaching across the space between them, her hand finding his in the firelight. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong. Thank you, she said, for seeing me. Taze held her gaze across the flames, neither pulling away nor speaking. Something shifted between them in that moment. A boundary crossed. A new territory entered without maps to guide them. From her blankets, Singing Bird watched with knowing eyes, a small smile playing across her weathered face. Morning broke clear and cold, frost rimming the grass around their camp. As they prepared to depart for the final leg of their journey, Emma noticed Taze scanning the surrounding terrain with unusual intensity. Is something wrong? She asked as she helped Singing Bird pack the cooking utensils. Taze's expression remained neutral, but his eyes were alert. Not sure. Tracks near spring. Men on horseback passed during night. The Foster family, perhaps? Emma suggested. No. Different direction. He checked his rifle, then spoke quietly to Little Fox, who nodded and disappeared into the trees on some errand. They rode out shortly after, their formation tighter than previous days. Taze kept Emma close beside him, with Singing Bird and the pack horses between them and Little Fox, who had returned with a troubled expression that he communicated silently to his uncle. The trail narrowed as they entered a ravine bordered by pine forest. Rock walls rose on their left while a steep, wooded slope climbed on their right. The horses' hooves crunched on the frosty ground, their breath visible in the morning chill. Halfway through the ravine, Taze suddenly reined in, raising his hand for the others to halt. His head tilted, listening. Emma heard nothing but the soft whistle of wind through pine needles. Then a metallic click from the trees above. Down! Taze shouted, lunging toward Emma as gunfire erupted from the slope. She felt his weight slam into her, carrying them both from their horses as bullets kicked up dirt where they had been moments before. They landed hard behind a boulder, Taze's body shielding hers. Across the trail, Singing Bird and Little Fox had taken cover in a shallow depression. Stay down, Taze ordered, drawing his revolver. He fired twice toward the source of the shots, then turned to Emma. When I move, run to the large pine. Do not stop. Before she could respond, he darted from cover, firing as he moved to draw attention from her. Emma gathered herself and sprinted for the pine he had indicated, expecting at any moment to feel the impact of a bullet. She reached the tree and scathed and pressed against its trunk, heart hammering. More shots rang out, followed by shouts from the hillside. That's her. Get the girl. Emma recognized the voice with a shock of horror, one of Blackwood's men who had visited their cabin. Somehow they had tracked her. But how? The answer came moments later when another voice called out, Sullivan, your daughter's down there. Tell her to come out before the Apache gets shot. Her father was with them. The realization froze her blood. Thomas Sullivan had sold her twice. First to Taze, now back to Blackwood. A bullet splintered bark inches from her face, shocking her back to the present danger. Across the ravine, she saw Little Fox firing a small bow, his arrows finding marks with uncanny accuracy. A cry of pain from the hillside confirmed his aim was true. Taze appeared beside her suddenly, blood streaming from a graze along his arm. More men coming from south, he said tersely. We must move now. My father's with them, Emma said, the words bitter on her tongue. Something dangerous flashed in Taze's eyes. He sold you again? It seems so. Taze checked his ammunition, expression grim. Follow ravine north. Singing Bird knows safe place. I will delay them. No. Emma grabbed his uninjured arm. I won't leave you to face them alone. This is not your fight. They're here for me, she insisted. I won't run while you die protecting me. Their eyes locked in a battle of wills, interrupted by another volley of gunfire. Little Fox appeared beside them, blood staining his shirt from what appeared to be a shoulder wound. Go with him, Taze ordered Emma. Now. Instead, Emma picked up a fallen branch, not much of a weapon but better than nothing. I'm staying. Before Taze could argue further, a man broke through the trees 20 yards away, rifle raised. Emma swung her branch at his legs as he passed their position, sending him sprawling. Taze was on him instantly, disarming him with brutal efficiency. The man reached for a knife, but froze when Taze pressed a gun to his head. Emma recognized him, Blackwood's foreman, a brutal man who enjoyed terrorizing debtors. Don't kill him, she said, surprising herself with the words. Taze struck the man unconscious with the gun but instead, then searched him quickly. From the foreman's pocket, he withdrew a silver pocket watch that glinted in the dappled light. He handed it to Emma. Blackwood's, she confirmed, recognizing the ornate engraving. More shouts came from further down the ravine. They were being surrounded. How many? Emma asked. 5, maybe 6, Taze replied, reloading his revolver. Too many. Emma looked at the wounded Little Fox, then back to where Singing Bird waited with the horses. A decision crystallized in her mind. I could go to them, she said. Draw them away while you escape. Taze's face hardened. No. It's the logical solution. They want me, not you. And when Blackwood has you? Taze challenged. What then? Emma clutched the pocket watch, feeling its weight. I'll find a way. I'm stronger now than I was. No, Taze repeated, his voice softening. We fight together or escape together. No one left behind. A bullet whined past them, too close for comfort. Taze made a decision. North path. Go now. I follow. This time Emma didn't argue. As bullets continued to fly, they made their way through the ravine toward where Singing Bird waited, Taze covering their retreat with carefully placed shots. Behind them, Thomas Sullivan's voice carried on the wind. Emmy, don't be a fool, girl. Come back. Emma didn't look back. They rode hard through the remainder of the day, taking paths so narrow and steep that Emma marveled at the sure-footedness of their horses. By nightfall, they had left the ravine far behind, climbing into a labyrinth of box canyons where Singing Bird led them with surprising confidence despite her age. As darkness fell, they reached what appeared to be a dead end, a sheer rock face blocking further progress. Taze dismounted with difficulty, his wounded arm stiff with dried blood, and moved to a section of the wall partially hidden by scrub brush. He pushed aside the vegetation to reveal a narrow opening. "Cave," he explained, helping Emma dismount. "Known only to few Apache. Safe place." They led the horses through the opening into a cavern large enough to stand in, with a high ceiling that disappeared into darkness. A small stream trickled along one wall, providing water. Once inside, Taze carefully replaced the brush to conceal their entrance. Little Fox's wound proved more serious than it had initially appeared. The bullet had torn through muscle in his shoulder, leaving him feverish and weak from blood loss. While Singing Bird tended to him with herbs from her medicine pouch, Emma examined Taze's arm. "It needs cleaning," she said, tearing a strip from her undergarment to use as a bandage. "The bullet just grazed you, but it's deep." Taze nodded, watching as she dipped the cloth in the stream and began carefully washing away the dried blood. His stoicism was remarkable. He made no sound despite what must have been considerable pain as she cleaned the wound. "You are good healer," he said as she finished binding his arm. "My mother taught me basic doctoring," Emma replied. In frontier towns, medical care is often women's work. Singing Bird approached, her face grave as she spoke to Taze in rapid Apache. He translated for Emma. "Little Fox's fever rises. Grandmother fears infection in the wound." Emma moved to where the boy lay on a bed of pine boughs, his normally alert eyes glazed with pain. "Let me see what I can do." Working together, she and Singing Bird cleaned the bullet wound thoroughly, applied a poultice of herbs, and bound it tightly. The old woman nodded approval at Emma's careful work, patting her hand in silent thanks. Later, as Little Fox finally slept, Emma joined Taze near the cave entrance where he kept watch. "Will Blackwood's men follow us here?" she asked. "They will try," he replied. "But Apache land is maize to white men. Many will become lost, turn back." "And my father?" Taze's expression hardened. "If he continues, he will find only what he seeks, death." Emma felt a hollow ache at the thought, but no longer the sharp pain his betrayal had first caused. "He's made his choice," she said quietly, "as I've made mine." They sat in silence for a time, listening to the soft drip of water within the cave. Finally, Taze spoke. "You fought well today. Did not run, did not freeze with fear." "I surprised myself," Emma admitted. "A week ago, I would have been paralyzed with terror. Fear is natural. Courage is choice." Taze reached for something wrapped in hide beside him. "Time you learn more than running." He unwrapped a small bow, intricately carved and clearly old, its wood polished by years of handling. "My father's bow," he explained. "First weapon I learned. Good for silent hunting, good for defense." Emma accepted it with surprise. "You would teach me to use this?" "Yes, not just for fighting, for food, for survival." His eyes met hers. "You are no longer white girl who waits for others to decide fate. You must have skills of your own." The following days in the cave hideaway took on a rhythm. While Little Fox recovered and Singing Bird gathered medicinal plants from the surrounding area, Taze taught Emma the basics of archery using his father's bow. Her first attempts were embarrassingly poor, arrows flying wild or dropping limply a few feet away. But she persisted, driven by the knowledge that their survival might one day depend on her ability to hunt or defend herself. On the fourth morning, as dawn light filtered through the concealed entrance, Emma finally hit the target Taze had fashioned from bundled grass. Not a perfect shot, but firm enough to stick. "Good," he said, the simple praise warming her more than effusive compliments ever had. Again. By the seventh day, Little Fox's fever had broken, and Emma could consistently hit targets at 30 paces. The bow no longer felt awkward in her hands, becoming an extension of her will. Each small success built her confidence. That evening, as they shared a rabbit Emma had managed to bring down herself, Taze outlined their situation. "Blackwood's men still search. 2 days ago, I found their tracks 3 miles south." He added more wood to their small, smokeless fire. "Winter camp is 1 day's journey north, but path there crosses open ground, dangerous with hunters looking for us. What are our options? Emma asked. Wait longer, hope they give up. Or move now, travel by night, risk being seen. Singing Bird spoke up, her Apache translated by Taze. She says staying makes Little Fox's wound heal better. Going means reaching our people, more protection. Emma considered this. If we wait and they find this cave, we're trapped. If we go and they catch us in the open, we have no shelter. She looked at Taze. Which do you think is wiser? Neither choice is safe, he replied. But I trust your judgment now. His words, so simple yet profound in their respect, touched her deeply. A month ago, no man had valued her opinion on matters beyond cooking or sewing. Now, a warrior asked her view on their survival. We go, she decided. Together. Taze nodded, satisfaction in his eyes. Tomorrow night, we travel to my people. They traveled through the night as planned, moving silently under a quarter moon that provided just enough light to navigate but not enough to expose them on the open stretches between sheltering forests. Emma rode close to Taze, both of them constantly scanning their surroundings for signs of pursuit. Little Fox, still weak but determined, scouted ahead while Singing Bird kept the pack horses quiet with gentle words and occasional treats of dried apple. By dawn, they had crossed the most exposed terrain and entered a pine forest that Taze said marked the outer boundary of his people's winter territory. We rest here until sunset, he decided, helping Emma dismount in a small clearing. Then final journey to camp. As they established their temporary rest site, Emma sensed a subtle change in Taze's demeanor, a relaxing of the hypervigilance that had characterized him since the ambush. They were nearing safety, nearing his home. Your people? She asked as they shared a cold breakfast of dried meat and berries. Do they know you're bringing a white woman? No, Taze admitted. But Singing Bird is respected elder. Her acceptance of you will matter. And you, Emma pressed. What is your standing among them? A faint smile touched his lips. I am war leader of my band. Not chief, that is my uncle, but my voice is heard in council. The revelation shouldn't have surprised her, yet somehow it did. She had come to know Taze as her protector, her teacher, but had given little thought to his position in his larger society. Get some rest, he advised, seeing her stifle a yawn. Tonight we complete our journey. Emma settled against the base of a pine tree, wrapping her blanket around her shoulders. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her as she contemplated what lay ahead. Living among the Apache, learning their ways, becoming something neither fully of her old world nor fully of theirs. She must have dozed eventually, for she woke to Taze's hand on her shoulder, his finger to his lips warning silence. The sun was high, they had slept several hours. Little Fox appeared at the edge of the clearing, speaking in a hushed, urgent voice. Riders, Taze translated for Emma. Coming from south. 8 men. Emma's heart raced. Blackwood. Yes, and your father. They hastily gathered their belongings, preparing to move deeper into the forest, when Singing Bird suddenly stiffened, head tilted in listening. She spoke sharply to Taze, who turned toward the northern edge of the clearing just as 2 riders emerged from the trees. Emma's breath caught, but these were not Blackwood's men. These were Apache warriors, painted for battle, rifles held ready. A rapid exchange in Apache followed, the tension in the clearing palpable until one of the warriors suddenly grinned and clasped Taze's arm in greeting. More words were exchanged, with frequent glances toward Emma. What's happening? She whispered. These are my cousins, Taze explained. Hunting party saw Blackwood's men crossing our territory, sent warning to camp. These 2 were sent to find us. The brief reunion was cut short by Little Fox's return, his expression urgent as he reported to Taze. Blackwood's men are close, Taze told Emma. We must move now. They mounted quickly, the 2 Apache warriors taking defensive positions as they began to ride north. They had covered less than half a mile when a shout rang out behind them, followed by the crack of a rifle. Keep riding, Taze ordered, falling back to cover their retreat. Emma hesitated, unwilling to leave him behind. One of the Apache warriors gestured urgently for her to follow, but she turned her horse instead, determined not to abandon Taze to face their pursuers alone. As she crested a small rise, she saw them. Blackwood's men spread out in a loose semicircle, her father and the saloon owner slightly behind them. Taze sat his horse defiantly before them, rifle raised. "That's far enough," Blackwood called. "We've come for the girl." "She is under my protection," Taze replied, his voice carrying clearly in the forest quiet. Thomas Sullivan urged his horse forward. "Emmy, thank God you're alive. We've come to take you home." The naked hypocrisy of his words ignited something in Emma. She rode forward to Taze's side, the bow he had taught her to use strung and ready in her hand. "I am home, father," she said coldly. "You sold me twice. There won't be a third time." "Now, Miss Sullivan," Blackwood interjected smoothly, "your father regrets his hasty decision. We've come to rectify a mistake." "The only mistake was trusting either of you," Emma replied. She noticed Taze glance sideways at her, approval in his eyes. Her father's face reddened with anger. "Don't be a fool, girl. You choose a savage over your own blood? Over your own kind." "My own blood sold me like cattle," Emma shot back. "And as for my kind," she gestured to Taze and the Apache warriors who had now moved into position behind them, "I've chosen them." Blackwood's patience visibly thinned. "Enough of this. Sullivan, control your daughter." He addressed his men. "Take the girl. Kill the Indians if they resist." As the hired guns began to spread out, Emma noticed her father reach into his coat pocket and withdraw his familiar silver flask. His hands trembled as he took a long swallow. Even now, even here, the bottle was his refuge. "Last chance, Emmy," Thomas called, tucking the flask away. "Come home where you belong." Emma raised her chin, feeling Taze solid and unwavering beside her. "I am exactly where I belong." The forest fell silent for one breathless moment. Birds stilled, wind dropped, time suspended between heartbeats. Then chaos erupted. One of Blackwood's men fired first, his bullet splintering bark inches from Taze's head. The Apache warriors returned fire immediately, their accuracy deadly. Two of Blackwood's hired guns fell before the rest could take cover behind trees and rocks. "Go!" Taze shouted to Emma, pushing her horse toward the shelter of a boulder. She slid from the saddle, notching an arrow to her bow as Taze dismounted beside her. "5 men left," he said tersely, checking his rifle. "Plus Blackwood and your father." "What about Little Fox and Singing Bird?" Emma asked, ducking as bullets whined overhead. "Cousins will protect them." Taze's eyes were fierce with battle light. "Stay low. Use bow only if they come close." He moved to the edge of the boulder, firing strategically, not wild shots but carefully placed bullets meant to pin down their attackers. Emma peered around the other side, trying to track the positions of Blackwood's men through the trees. Movement caught her eye, one of the gunmen attempting to circle behind them. Without hesitation, she drew back her bow and loosed an arrow. It missed his chest but struck his arm, causing him to drop his rifle with a howl of pain. Taze glanced at her in surprise, then nodded approval before returning his attention to the battle. The Apache warriors had taken higher ground, raining fire down on Blackwood's increasingly disorganized men. Suddenly, Thomas Sullivan broke from cover, running not toward the fight but away from it, heading for the horses they had left tied at the forest edge. "Coward!" Blackwood shouted after him. "Get back here, Sullivan." Emma watched her father's retreat with a strange detachment. The man who had once been the center of her world was now just a sad, broken figure fleeing responsibility as he always had. The moment's distraction nearly proved fatal. A bullet struck the rock beside her head, sending stone fragments slicing across her cheek. Emma fell back, hand pressed to her bleeding face. Taze was at her side instantly. "How bad?" "Just a cut," she assured him, wiping blood from her eye. His fingers gently brushed her cheek, checking the wound for himself. Their eyes met briefly, concern in his, determination in hers. Then they were back in the fight, the brief moment of tenderness swallowed by survival's demands. The battle shifted as more Apache warriors arrived, drawn by the sounds of gunfire. Blackwood's remaining men found themselves surrounded, caught in a deadly crossfire. "Surrender!" Taze called out in English. "Throw down weapons." 2 of Blackwood's men complied immediately, clearly recognizing their hopeless position. But Blackwood himself remained defiant, sheltered behind a massive fallen log. "This isn't over," he shouted. "The girl belongs to me. I paid for her fair and square." "I belong to no one," Emma called back, her voice steady despite her racing heart. A shot rang out from the direction of the horses, Thomas Sullivan, firing wildly from where he had taken cover. The bullet struck one of the Apache warriors, sending him sprawling. What happened next unfolded with terrible clarity. Blackwood seized the distraction to emerge from cover, pistol aimed directly at Taze. Emma saw his finger tighten on the trigger and acted without thinking, launching herself at Taze just as the gun fired. They tumbled to the ground together as the bullet passed through the space where Taze had been standing. He rolled immediately, shielding her body with his own as he returned fire. His bullet found its mark. Blackwood staggered, clutching his chest, then collapsed. In the sudden silence that followed, Emma became aware of the weight of Taze above her, the rapid rise and fall of his chest, the smell of gunpowder and sweat and pine. His face was inches from hers, eyes wild with battle and something else, fear for her. "You could have been killed," he said, voice rough with emotion. "So could you," she replied simply. Another shot broke the moment. Thomas Sullivan again, this time aiming directly at them. Taze pushed Emma down, twisting to return fire. But before he could, her father crumpled, shot by one of the Apache warriors who had circled behind him. "Pa!" Despite everything, the cry tore from Emma's throat. She scrambled to her feet, running toward where her father had fallen. Thomas Sullivan lay in a growing pool of blood, the bullet having struck him in the side. His eyes widened as Emma knelt beside him. "Emmy," he gasped, reaching for her hand. Didn't know what Blackwood planned." "Don't talk," she said, pressing her hand against his wound. Blood seeped between her fingers, warm and relentless. "We need to stop the bleeding." Taze appeared beside her, his face grim as he assessed Thomas's injury. "The bullet is deep," he said quietly. Emma tore a strip from her tunic, fashioning a makeshift bandage. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, the same hands that had tended her father's cuts and fevers for years. But this was different. This wound would not yield to her care. "Why did you come with him?" she asked, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. "Why sell me twice?" Thomas's face contorted with pain and shame. "Blackwood said he'd kill me if I didn't help find you. Said you were stolen property." His breathing grew more labored. "But when I saw you with him," he glanced weakly at Taze. "Saw you standing proud, not afraid. Knew I'd been wrong." Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. This man had betrayed her in every way possible, yet some small part of her still ached for the father he had once been. Taze touched her shoulder gently. "The fighting is over. Blackwood is dead. 2 of his men also. The rest surrender." As if to confirm his words, one of the Apache warriors approached, holding something out to Taze, a blood-stained bandana that had been used to bind a wounded warrior's arm. The sight of Apache and white blood mingled on the cloth seemed a fitting symbol for the day's events. Thomas coughed, blood speckling his lips. "Emmy," he whispered, "can you forgive a broken man?" Emma looked into her father's eyes, the same eyes that had once lit up with pride at her accomplishments, the same eyes that had later looked through her as if she were invisible. "I forgive you, Pa," she said softly, knowing it was true even as she said it. Not for his sake, but for her own. To release the past was to free herself. Thomas Sullivan managed a faint smile before his eyes went distant, fixed on something beyond the forest canopy above them. His hand went slack in hers. He was gone. They buried Thomas Sullivan as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. Despite Blackwood's body being left for scavengers, Apache justice for enemies, Taze had ordered a proper burial for Emma's father, recognizing her need for closure even if the man hadn't deserved such respect. The Apache warriors dug a grave beneath a towering pine, deep enough to protect the body from predators. Emma wrapped her father in his own blanket, placing his wooden flask beside him, the companion that had been both his solace and his destruction. She said no words over the grave. There was nothing left to say that hadn't been spoken in his final moments. As the last stones were placed atop the grave mound, Singing Bird approached. The old woman had emerged from hiding once the battle ended, immediately tending to the wounded with Emma's help. Now she stood beside Emma, her weathered hand taking the younger woman's. To Emma's surprise, Singing Bird began a low, melodic chant, an Apache prayer for the dead. "She honors your grief," Taze translated quietly. "Not the man." Emma nodded, touched by the gesture. When the song ended, Singing Bird pressed something into her palm, a small stone bead carved with a spiral pattern. "For your journey beyond sorrow," Taze explained. "The spiral represents how life continues, even after great loss." They mounted their horses as dusk gathered, leaving behind the burial site and the battle scene. The surviving members of Blackwood's party had been stripped of weapons and sent back toward the settlements with a warning never to return to Apache lands. Blackwood's death would likely be attributed to Apache raiders, another casualty in the ongoing frontier conflicts. Few would know or care about the true story. As they rode, Taze kept his horse close to Emma's. "We reach winter camp before full dark," he said. "My people will have questions when they see you." "What will you tell them?" Emma asked. "The truth, that you were wronged by your own people and proved yourself worthy of ours." His eyes met hers. "The rest will depend on you." "What do you mean?" "My people will accept you under my protection. But your place among us, that you must find yourself." Emma considered his words as they rode. The events of the past weeks had transformed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. The timid, dutiful daughter who had left Copper Springs no longer existed. In her place was a woman who had survived betrayal, learned to hunt and fight, and faced death without flinching. As twilight deepened into night, they crested a rise overlooking a sheltered valley. Below, dozens of wickiups stood in orderly groupings around central fires. Children played between the dwellings while women worked at cooking fires and men tended to horses in a nearby meadow. It was larger and more organized than Emma had expected. Not the chaotic, primitive camp of frontier tales, but a functioning community with its own order and purpose. Their arrival caused an immediate stir. People emerged from wickiups, gathering to watch as Taze led their party down into the camp. Emma felt dozens of eyes upon her, some curious, some wary, some openly hostile. A tall, distinguished man with gray streaking his braided hair stepped forward to greet them. The resemblance to Taze was unmistakable, his uncle, the chief. A rapid exchange in Apache followed, Taze explaining their presence while the older man glanced repeatedly at Emma. Finally, the chief addressed her directly in halting English. "You are welcome to our fire, daughter of Sullivan. Taze speaks for your courage." Emma inclined her head respectfully. "Thank you for your welcome. I come in peace and gratitude." Her simple response seemed to satisfy him. With a nod to Taze, he turned to address the gathered Apache, his voice carrying authority that needed no translation. The crowd's tension visibly eased at his words, though some still regarded Emma with suspicion. "He has declared you under Band's protection," Taze explained as they dismounted. "None will harm you here." Singing Bird led Emma to her own wickiup, indicating that Emma would share her dwelling. Inside, the space was neat and surprisingly comfortable, with woven mats covering the floor and furs piled for bedding. The old woman busied herself preparing a small meal while Emma sat in exhausted silence, the events of the day catching up with her. Later, after eating and washing the blood and dirt from her skin in a nearby stream, Emma sat by Singing Bird's fire. The camp had settled for the night, though she occasionally caught curious glances from those passing by. Taze joined them, sitting across the fire. In the dancing light, his features seemed both familiar and strange. The man who had protected her, taught her, respected her, now framed by the context of his people and position. "Tomorrow there will be council," he said, "to decide about Blackwood's men, about border patrols." He hesitated. "And about you. What must I do?" Emma asked. "Be truthful. Show same courage you showed in battle." His eyes reflected the flames. "Council respects strength and honesty." Singing Bird spoke, her words translated by Taze. "My grandmother says you should wear this." From a small pouch, she withdrew a necklace. A simple leather cord strung with a silver cross that had belonged to Emma's mother, now paired with colorful Apache beads. "I thought I'd lost this," Emma said, touching the cross in wonder. "Found in your bundle after fever," Taze explained. "Grandmother kept safe for you. Now she adds our beads to your symbol." The mixed necklace represented everything Emma had become, neither fully of her old world nor fully Apache, but something new forged from both. She slipped it over her head, feeling its weight against her heart. "Taze," she said quietly as Singing Bird retired to the wickiup. "When we first met, you bought me to free me. Now that I am free, what do you want of me?" The question hung between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. Taze was silent for a long moment, his face solemn in the firelight. "I want what cannot be taken or bought," he finally replied. "I want what must be freely given." Emma held his gaze across the flames, understanding perfectly what he could not bring himself to say directly. The warrior who had rescued her, protected her, and taught her to protect herself now stood before her not as savior but as man, offering his heart with the same quiet dignity with which he did everything else. "Some gifts," she said softly, "are given long before they're named." 1 year later, spring sunlight dappled the ground as Emma knelt beside a small herb garden outside the dwelling she now called home. The structure stood at the edge of the Apache encampment, not a traditional wickiup, but not a white settler's cabin either. Taze had built it with her during the winter months, combining Apache building methods with elements Emma remembered from her former life. The result was something new, like Emma herself, a bridge between worlds. She gathered sprigs of sage and wild mint, adding them to her basket. Her hands, once soft from household chores, now bore the calluses of a woman who rode, hunted, and built alongside her Apache family. The past year had transformed her in ways she could never have imagined when she left Copper Springs. The trading party returns, called a young Apache girl in the mixture of English and Apache that had become common when speaking to Emma. Emma looked up to see riders approaching the camp from the south, Taze leading a small group of men who had journeyed to the territorial settlement for the spring trading. Her heart quickened at the sight of him, still strong and straight in the saddle, his face breaking into a rare smile when he spotted her. The winter had been hard but not unbearable. Emma had learned to tan hides, to weave baskets so tightly they could hold water, to track game through snow-covered forests. More importantly, she had earned her place in the community, not as an outsider to be tolerated, but as a valued member who contributed skills of her own. Her knowledge of reading and writing had proven unexpectedly valuable. She kept records of trades, wrote letters dictated by tribal elders to territorial officials, and taught interested young Apache the alphabet. In return, the community had taught her their language, traditions, and survival skills. Taze dismounted near their dwelling, handing his horse to a waiting boy before approaching Emma. Though they had been married in an Apache ceremony at midwinter, she still felt a flutter of joy each time he returned from a journey. "The trading went well?" she asked as he reached her. "Very well," he confirmed, taking her hands in his. "The new agent at the fort is fair-minded, respects our boundaries." This was good news. The uneasy peace between the Apache and white settlers remained fragile, dependent on mutual respect that was too often absent. "I brought something," Taze added, reaching into his saddlebag. He withdrew a small package wrapped in cloth. Emma unwrapped it to find seeds, vegetable varieties she had mentioned missing from her former life. The thoughtfulness of the gift touched her deeply. "Thank you," she said simply, knowing he understood all she didn't say. That evening, as the camp gathered for a communal meal celebrating the successful trading expedition, Emma sat beside Taze near the central fire. Singing Bird, now moving more slowly with age but still sharp-minded, entertained children with stories while Little Fox, fully recovered from his wound and approaching manhood, demonstrated hunting techniques to younger boys. Emma observed the scene with quiet contentment. The past year had brought challenges, suspicious looks from some tribe members, difficult adjustment to Apache ways, occasional raids from hostile bands that threatened their safety. But it had also brought a sense of belonging she had never known in Copper Springs. After the meal, as families drifted back to their dwellings, Taze led Emma away from the camp to a ridge overlooking the valley below. The sunset painted the landscape in golds and crimsons, a beauty that still took her breath away. "I met someone in the settlement who knew you," Taze said as they watched the fading light. "Mrs. Peterson, from your church." Emma stilled. "What did she say?" "She asked if I had news of you. Many believe you died when Blackwood's party was attacked." His eyes met hers. "I told her you live well among your chosen people." "Did she believe you?" "Yes." Taze's hand found hers. "She gave me this for you." He handed her a small Bible, similar to her mother's that had been lost during their journey. Inside the cover, Mrs. Peterson had written, "May you find peace wherever God has led you." Emma traced the words with her finger, touched by the woman's understanding. "Did she ask if I would return?" "No," Taze replied. "I think she saw truth in my eyes when I spoke of you." They stood in comfortable silence as the first stars appeared. Behind them, the Apache camp settled for the night, cook fires burning low, voices quieting. Before them stretched the vast wilderness, neither completely safe nor completely threatening, much like life itself. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened," Emma said softly. "If my father had never gambled, if Blackwood had never made his offer, if you had never come to Copper Springs that day." Taze considered this. "The stream finds many paths to river," he said, "but water always seeks its true course." Emma smiled at his wisdom, her hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly where their child grew. A new life that would know both worlds, carrying forward the best of each. "Come," Taze said, noting her slight shiver as the evening cooled. "Let us go home." As they walked back toward their dwelling, neither fully Apache nor fully white, but something new and stronger than either alone, Emma reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. She had been traded like property, expected to be discarded or destroyed. Instead, she had been valued, protected, and ultimately loved for herself alone. The debt that had begun her journey was long since paid. What remained was the treasure neither of them had expected to find. A life built on respect, trust, and the courage to see beyond the boundaries others had drawn. Behind them, the sun's last light faded from the mountains. Ahead, their fire beckoned with warmth and promise. Together they walked toward it,